Why did Oklahoma housing get harder to afford? It was not one president, one governor, one interest rate, or one zoning ordinance. Homes became more expensive, borrowing became more expensive, building became more expensive, and the paycheck needed to buy a home failed to keep up. The previous article established the kitchen table problem. Using the same 10% down payment assumption in both periods, the typical Oklahoma home took about 21% of median household income in 2000. Today, it takes roughly 37%. That is the squeeze families feel before we ever get to politics. Housing affordability is not just the price of the house. It is also the cost of borrowing, taxes, insurance, supply, construction costs, and most important for Oklahoma, the paycheck expected to cover all of it. Washington helped raise the cost side. Oklahoma failed to strengthen the income side enough to keep up. The Federal Reserve matters enormously to mortgage rates, but it does not simply set the 30-year mortgage rate. Long-term mortgages are priced from long-term capital markets, with the 10-year Treasury yield serving as a basic benchmark. Inflation expectations, global demand for United States debt, and federal borrowing all matter. CBO projects federal debt held by the public at 101% of gross domestic product in 2026, rising to 120% by 2036. Congress does not set your mortgage rate, but Washington cannot borrow trillions and pretend the competition for money ends at the Capitol steps. The 2025 reconciliation law is estimated to add about $4.1 trillion to federal deficits over 10 years, including added debt service costs. Supporters can defend tax cuts or spending reductions, but trillions of dollars in additional borrowing are not fiscally free. Oklahoma House Republicans voted yes. Senator Lankford voted yes. Interest rates were not the only federal contribution. Tariffs raised the cost of imported goods by design. In one National Association of Home Builders survey, builders estimated the typical tariff cost effect at about $10,900 per new home. Washington cannot complain that starter homes cost too much while making some materials used to build them more expensive. Materials matter. Labor matters too. Foreign-born workers made up about 1/3 of construction trades workers. They accounted for major shares of drywall, roofing, painting, flooring, and other building trades. Foreign-born does not mean undocumented. But the policy question remains. If America wants millions of additional homes, who is going to build them? Washington explains much of the recent squeeze. It does not explain all of Oklahoma's problem. A state evaluation found that between 2009 and 2016, median household income increased 14.8%, while median rent rose 20.8% and home values rose 22.8%. The paycheck problem was already here. For roughly 15 years, Oklahoma's economic strategy has been recognizable. Lower taxes, lower business costs, more incentives, and market the state as an inexpensive place to operate. There is a case for being competitive. But after 15 years, the question is not whether businesses like cheap. The question is what the strategy did for the people who live here. This may be the central question in the article. Oklahoma spent 15 years trying to make itself cheaper. Maybe the better economic development strategy is to make Oklahomans worth more. Cheap labor attracts companies looking for cheap labor. Skilled people attract companies willing to pay for skilled people. Oklahoma's minimum wage remains $7.25 an hour, the federal floor that has not changed since 2009. Minimum wage increases involve trade-offs, but wage floors can also create ripple effects above the minimum. If a rising tide lifts all boats, Oklahoma might ask why it has kept the wage floor anchored since 2009. Low wages do not eliminate the cost of healthcare or food. They can move part of the bill somewhere else. GAO found 162,803 non-disabled, non-elderly working adults enrolled in Oklahoma Medicaid. Walmart and Amazon together accounted for 7,381 working Oklahoma Medicaid enrollees. Having a job does not always mean earning enough to get off public assistance. Oklahoma also offers tax credits, reduced tax rates, incentives, and protected programs. Some may produce real benefits. But announcing a project is not the same as proving taxpayers got a good return. That is why the shadow budget deserves one complete independent review. The test should be whether Oklahoma families eventually earn more because of it. The paycheck test ties the state argument together. In inflation-adjusted dollars, Oklahoma median household income increased about 3.2% from 2018 to 2023. Nationally, it increased about 6.4%. Oklahoma grew at roughly half the national rate. If economic development is working for families, eventually it has to show up in the paycheck. Republicans have controlled Oklahoma's basic economic direction for roughly 15 years. They own the results of the low-tax, low-cost, incentive-heavy strategy. If they believe the model worked, they should defend it by the family paycheck, not just by tax rates, press releases, or investment announcements. Democrats should not get to campaign against Republican results without explaining what they would do differently. Saying invest more in public education is not enough. Where does the money come from? Oklahoma makes tax increases difficult, and Republicans hold overwhelming majorities. A realistic Democratic budget must say how some existing money would be repurposed. The money questions are real. Oklahoma put $200 million into an income tax endowment. The private school tax credit authorization is moving toward $275 million a year. And Oklahoma still gives new oil and gas production a preferential gross production tax rate for its first 36 months. Democrats should say what they would keep, reform, end, or repurpose. The private school tax credit data are remarkable. Only 7.9% of approved students were reported as coming directly from public schools. More than 92% did not. That does not mean no family benefited. It does mean Democrats should explain how much of a $275 million authorization they would keep, reform, or repurpose. None of this means supply does not matter. Oklahoma needs more housing where demand is growing. Zoning, permitting, infrastructure, and development rules can make building easier or harder. More supply can reduce pressure on home prices. But more supply by itself cannot manufacture the paycheck needed to buy a home. What if Oklahoma changed the question? Instead of asking how cheaply a company can operate here, ask how valuable an Oklahoma worker can become. That means schools, career tech, community colleges, universities, apprenticeships, skilled trades, childcare, and healthcare. A skilled workforce may be the most valuable business incentive a state can offer. Those are different policies made by different governments for different reasons. But families do not pay their bills in separate policy silos. Everything arrives in the same checking account. Until our economic policies produce a different answer, we should stop confusing cheap Oklahoma with prosperous Oklahomans. Follow the money at langdon.substack.com.